Today, my guest is Dr. Tsukasa Ikegami. He was born and raised in Kyoto City, and he graduated from Kyoto University in 1984. After training at the Department of Psychiatry at Kyoto University Hospital for 2.5 years, he became a staff psychiatrist at Sakamoto Hospital, a leading psychiatric facility in Higashi Osaka. There he undertook the care of patients with both acute and chronic mental illnesses, the majority of whom had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. At the age of 36, Dr. Ikegami began training analysis with Dr. Takao Oda, the first psychiatrist in Japan to become a Jungian psychoanalyst. After 3 years of analytic training, Dr. Ikegami went abroad to study at the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, Switzerland. It was there he successfully earned his diploma as a Jungian psychoanalyst. Dr. Ikegami returned to Japan, where he opened a counseling-based practice in Ashiya in 2001, while working as a chief counselor for the lecturers and administrative staff of Osaka Prefectural University and as an industrial psychiatrist with a major company. Fast forward 18 years, and Dr. Ikegami consolidated his Ashiya practice with a new mental health clinic in Higashi Mikuni, Osaka. Thus, Ikegami Mental Health Clinic opened on April 1st of 2020. He is a senior training analyst and a committee member of the Association of Jungian Analysts Japan, training and supervising the candidates for certified Jungian analysts. Dr. Ikegami, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, of course. I'm very excited to learn more about you and to share you with my audience. Would you mind, can we please start just what was it like for you growing up in Japan? What was kind of like your childhood like? Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Japan is where I was born, where I
Mm,
started my life. So I good and bad, I accept Japan. And uh, so when I studied abroad at the Jungian Institute, so
mm,
I uh, we study mythology,
uh,
mythology of various countries, including one's own country. So when I
uh,
read Japanese mythology, I felt somehow very healed.
oh,
Okay, that was my uh, kind of encountering with Japan, and I remember the mythology was written when Japan was under threat by China.
mm,
China was grown into a superpower, centralized country. By the time it was 8th century,
uh,
and Japan was dispatching envoys to China and learning how to govern the country, and was trying to establish its government.
mm,
So and the mythology was written, and it tries to describe the lineage of Tenno family, emperor's
mm,
family, as a lineage of the creation gods. So
uh,
Tenno uh, was is the offsprings of creation gods. So,
uh,
uh, so Japan had to consolidate its national power and consolidate its identity at that time uh, to protect itself against China.
uh,
So
okay.
I remember it, and yeah. So I'm not so trying to focus on its national side, but I
mm,
think it is very natural for any group of people or any
mm,
country to try to consolidate its identity
yeah,
and its power
yeah,
when it feels under threat of any outside powers. So,
mm,
and
mhm,
the history of Japan is the repetition of this protection and the learning from the superpowers. And, yeah.
oh,
So, for example, in Japanese history, there was a 200 years of uh, enclosure of the country. Japan banned any international relations with other countries,
mm,
and after that period, America came to Japan.
mm,
It was led by Perry, and
mm,
he came to Tokyo Bay, and with a fleet of 4 warships to
mm.
intimidate and press Japan to open its country
Oh,
for
wow.
trading. Also, yeah, but Japan was very uh, intelligently
Mm,
responded to it, and it was successfully Japan was successfully uh, started good relations with America and
okay.
keeping its independence. Yeah.
Oh, how
And
can I ask you? You mentioned that learning about like Japanese mythology while you were in Zurich, it was like healing for you. Why was that? In what way was that healing for you?
yeah, I was moved by
Mm,
simply by the creator myths.
mm,
I could I could feel the feelings of creation gods we
mm,
described there. Uh, and yeah, I have to add. So interestingly, this tendency is often seen in the recovery process of psychotics when
uh,
they were in a crisis and tried to defend themselves from
uh,
outer and inner pressures. So they try to consolidate its power of ego
mm.
and yeah. So
You're saying like so for Japan, their identity was formed because of the threat of China. They had to consolidate and come up with a mythology and a story to become a nation, and that for people, when similarly, when people are under threat, they too have to try and consolidate and make meaning out of it and form an identity, kind of.
yes,
Ah, that's very interesting.
so as a psychiatrist, I found it very interesting.
Hmm.
So and now the Japan is uh, trying to learn from developed countries,
Hmm.
Euro-American countries, or other even Asian countries. So there's learning and consolidate itself. So this tendency is continuing even today.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
that I felt that fits my own mentality.
oh, yeah.
So I'm Japanese. Could it be an
Uh,
answer?
I'm sorry, what was that? What did you say?
Uh, uh, can it be an answer?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, thank you. Um, and how did you, growing up in Japan, what, what, how did you become interested in psychiatry? So I'm sure there's, yeah, psychiatry. Why psychiatry? Why not, a businessman
Uh, so,
or,
uh, so I was in fact interested in clinical psychology when I was a
okay.
medical student, and at that time, Dr. Hayao Kawai
Oh,
was already famous. He was the
oh,
first Jungian analyst in Japan, and
oh,
giving lectures at my university, so I was free to attend his lectures.
oh,
So and yeah, so I was interested in psychology this time. So
Hmm.
and psychiatry was the only field I can do psychology. Psychology.
oh,
So I chose psychiatry, but uh, and at that time the theory of Rogers, Carl Rogers, had been
oh,
introduced into Japan. So
okay.
and I heard there was a heated heated argument about diagnosis and therapy. So
Hmm.
diagnosis necessary to treat patients, but uh, it it sees the patients from in a distant distant way. It put
Hmm.
distance
Oh,
from
yeah,
from patient and
right.
see him as an object.
Hmm.
So but it is very different from, uh, for example, Rogers' attitude toward
Hmm.
treatment.
Uh-huh.
So, so diagnosis was necessary, but then uh, how to do therapy with patients, so which is important, was uh, argued here in the clinical psychology. So, but
Hmm.
I was very much into Rogers's way,
Oh,
you know,
huh,
his three principles, for example,
huh.
empathy and congruence or unconditional positive regard for the client. So,
Hmm.
yeah, and I attended Kawai's lectures. So, and
Okay.
yeah, but and I, as a medical student, when I was doing the rotation
Hmm.
study
Hmm.
at each section of the university hospital, so
Hmm.
I I could observe how the psychiatrists respond, making a session with the patient. So
Uh-huh.
they ask questions and made prescription for the patient. But it's only that, no
Ah,
counseling. So so honestly, I didn't like psychiatry at that time.
ah, ah.
Yeah.
Because there was no counseling, it was just medicine.
Uh, to, yeah. Uh, I know it was now I can know it was not only that,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
but at that time, to my eyes, so they
Uh-huh.
were not doing as psychotherapists
Oh,
do. So
I see.
yeah,
Did you, in med school, did you enter med school with the plan of becoming a psychiatrist so you could do clinical psychology?
No, at first I didn't know what I should become.
Okay.
So yeah, while
And
studying, yeah, liberal arts and medicine, I was gradually interested in psychology.
okay. Okay. And then that's when you heard about Kawaii-san and you attended the lectures and you learned about Jung, or did you know about Jung before that?
Yes, so uh, in my high school days, I got interested in psychology, and I was told to read Kawaii's book. Uh,
Oh,
it was recommended to read it by my uncle. He
oh
somehow
wow.
knew Kawaii, and yeah, he told me it's interesting, so you should try to read it.
Which book was that?
Like that. Uh, its title was Complex, named
Oh,
in Japanese Complex. Uh,
oh,
that the main theme of the book was complex, but
okay.
it was an introduction into human psychology.
And
Yeah.
then that got you
So
interested in Jung?
so I uh, had, so when I was a medical student and attended his lecture, I felt he was very competent
Oh,
clinician and good Christian. So yeah, so I felt I was I want to do something like that.
oh,
But
cool.
the way of psychiatrists are very different. So yeah, but anyway, it was the only field I could do psychology. So I first entered psychiatry. So,
Okay,
uh,
okay.
for example, yeah, can you tell a story about my
Yes, please.
experience as a
Yes.
medical student? So, in my rotation study, a teaching doctor uh, gave us a story about a chronic progressive schizophrenia. He was male and he was so progressed, and he didn't say any words to the nurses and doctors, and he was abulic. He did nothing all day and bedridden,
Mm,
so autistic. So one day, uh, a young doctor was told to attend the patient,
mm,
and he tried Schwing's approach. Schwing's approach
mm.
to attend the doctor to go to the bedside and sit for a certain period of time
Okay.
and and don't talk because the patient doesn't talk,
Oh,
and listen to any words from the patient and try to attend any need for the patient. So this
okay.
is the form relationship with the patient.
Mm,
Schubing is the name of a German nurse who tried and who was a very famous psychotherapist with
okay.
schizophrenia. So yeah, she's like a pioneer
Oh,
in the field. Yeah.
oh,
And anyway, he tried this Schubing's method
mm,
for many days,
mm,
and 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 as usual, the patient said nothing, showed no response to the young doctor. But finally, one day, he raised his voice and said, "Go away." This is the end of the story by the teaching doctor. So,
Uh,
uh, yeah, we were in a way impressed by the difficulty of treating
uh,
schizophrenics, but
uh,
I was discontent with the way of his description.
mm,
First, uh, maybe he could have asked the young doctor
mm,
how, what, no, he could have asked us, how do you think, what do you think would you do in such a circumstances
mm,
to a patient? So,
uh,
because I thought it was his first expression, his true feeling. It was a good chance for the doctor
yeah,
to begin relationship
yeah,
to the patient. So yeah,
yeah,
so uh, it might have gone well, or it might not. I
mm,
don't know, but yeah, but
yeah, difficult.
he could have tried it. Yeah,
Uh,
okay.
uh,
So that was my response.
uh,
How how that is how I experienced psychiatry
mm,
in practice for the first time.
uh,
But my first day as a psychiatrist was a lucky one, I would say. Um, on the first day of my internship as a psychiatrist in the university hospital, so
mm,
I was shown around in the wards
mm,
by a senior doctor, and
mm,
some chronic patients came to me and talked to me
uh,
friendly.
uh,
Very, or and one patient was very impressive because he was making a stroll uh, in the ward, uh, in the courtyard of, the psychiatric ward, and
mm,
uh, I came across him, and he suddenly came to me and smiling, boy, you are the boy, aren't you? Mercedes Benz. And she smiled, and he got back to his stroke. So this patient was also very progressed and very autistic patient.
uh,
So
uh,
this was my first day as a psychiatrist. So
your first day.
and
Mm,
I would like to add, so in the psychiatric department of my university, psychopathology was very pursued.
oh, really?
I think my university is one of the best researchers of psychopathology,
Oh,
especially
okay.
of schizophrenics.
Oh,
But
oh,
for me, psychopathology was for diagnosis, but not for therapy. So I was not very interested in psychopathology.
uh,
But afterwards, in the course of my clinical practice, I gradually came to know diagnosis and psychopathology is very important
uh,
to perform psychotherapy with schizophrenia.
uh. You said at first you did not want to do therapy with psychopathology.
I was not attracted by
Uh-huh.
its way.
Uh,
It di- it make a diagnosis. It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the diagnosis, but But it doesn't tell us how to
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
do therapy with
Uh,
in the way clinical psychology does.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Interesting. And
but
how long after so you finished psychiatry residency internship,
uh,
and
yes.
then you started training with Dr. Takao Oda? How long after?
Yeah, my residency at the university hospital was 2.5 years, I remember. And after that, I began to work at a local uh, mental hospital.
Oh,
And there I treated many patients, including
hmm.
schizophrenics, and maybe 3 years after I began to work at the Sakamoto Hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah I began my training analysis with Dr. Oda, and Dr.
Oh,
Oda was a special. His first important work was psychotherapy with schizophrenia.
okay.
He used uh, drawing to heal his patients.
Oh, drawing.
Drawing.
Oh, cool. Is that you use drawing as well, right? Is that where you learned it from him?
Yes, I learned. Uh, yes, I did my personal analysis with him, but
Oh, oh,
yeah, I read his books and I could ask him. Uh, I I could ask him to supervise me on
oh,
my psychotherapy with schizophrenics.
oh, wow.
Uh,
I was going
so I did. Yeah.
I was going to save this question for later, but I think this is a good time. Um, there are a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists,
Uh,
therapists that do not believe therapy is good for people with schizophrenia. Um, is that is that a common belief in Japan, or do people in Japan think that therapy can be really good for people with schizophrenia?
I think so. They they think highly of uh, psychotherapy with even schizophrenia,
Hmm.
uh, but they are you generally most of psychiatrists are not doing it because they
Uh,
can't. So it
uh,
needs training to be
uh-huh.
to be able to do psychotherapy with difficult
Hmm.
patients. So
Yeah, I
uh,
see.
they don't do they don't study like me. I
Ah.
went for 4 years in Switzerland and yeah,
Yeah.
learned Jungian analysis and
Hmm.
to get diploma there. So
Did,
most psychiatrists are not so absorbed in. So it's almost crazy, I would say.
hmm. It shows
But
your commitment, your passion.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, it needs passion, but for any kind of psychotherapy, I would say.
Uh, uh-huh.
So they Japanese psychiatrists know uh, psycho, psychotherapy is very good, but
Hmm.
they also know it needs years of training.
Uh,
You know,
uh-huh.
so they are not usually they are not into it. Uh,
Hmm.
it's medicine is an art, not only a science.
Hmm.
So not all surgeon can operate like excellent doctors
Uh-huh.
like that. So at least it needs
Do
a
you,
training.
yeah. When you went to Zurich and you became certified in Jungian analysis, were you doing that
Mhm.
to help you better work with patients with schizophrenia, or were you doing that just because you really wanted to learn Jungian analysis?
Not just like, uh, I was also interested in treating neurotics
Hmm.
because analysis is first and foremost for neurotic
Hmm.
patients.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so as a psychiatrist, I was interested in that
Hmm.
uh, field. So
Yeah.
uh, also including psychotics, but uh,
Hmm.
treating psychotics needs a certain environment. For example, a hospital
Uh,
that can yeah, treat pa- inpatients
mhm.
that can hospitalize the patients when necessary. So
Mm. Mhm.
we need that kind of protection.
Structure.
Uh,
Uh. Um, with schizophrenia, from a Jungian understanding, like Jungian analysis theory and schizophrenia, do you do you think that the schizophrenia or the psychotic episode, the psychoticism,
mhm.
is trying to um, is like a trying to establish some type of equilibrium, or it's like a compensation, or
Mm.
do you think that it's like serves a purpose, that it has meaning?
Yes, I have an assumption that, uh, for example, in case of schizophrenia,
Hmm.
so that symptoms are represents the patient's reaction to schizophrenic uh, distraction of the psyche, so schizophrenic process.
Hmm.
So the symptoms are would be a reaction to the illness. It is an reaction to try to recover its uh, balance and reconstruct the psyche itself. So,
Okay.
so psychotherapy and even also pharmacotherapy is to help help the process.
Oh, okay. Is that when you use uh, psychopharmac psychopharmacology medicine? Um, do you try to use a small amount and help them become stable, but also through therapy help them understand what the symptoms were trying to reveal? Does that make sense?
What the symptoms try to reveal. Uh,
Like, if the symptoms are trying to establish equilibrium, but you give them medication and it takes away the symptoms, how do you establish equilibrium through therapy?
Or it's not to remove the symptoms, but the health. It's a healing process.
Hmm. Oh.
But if the power of uh, illness is too strong, so
Hmm.
patients can't recover.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Similar
this
to
is
like,
why
go ahead, sorry.
yeah, why the symptoms should be yeah, controlled by
Hmm.
medications. Yeah.
Similar to like depression, um, if depression has a meaning and it's trying to show you something is wrong so you can fix it,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't just be depressed laying on the floor. You have to take medicine to feel better so you can go to therapy to work through the depression, right? Similar?
Yes, it's similar. So, yeah, but I don't think, for example, major depression can be healed only by psychotherapy. So uh, probably psychotherapy and pharmacotherapy combined is
Oh,
the most effective way to
okay.
treat the
Yeah,
illness. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's yeah, impossible to interpret all symptoms
Mm,
as some meaningful expressions of
yeah.
patients'
Psychological.
uh, yeah, psychological expression. But yeah,
Uh-huh. As a Jungian analyst, does it change the way that you prescribe medication? Like, do you prescribe medication differently than other psychiatrists who are not Jungian?
I think uh, I'm using medication very much like other psychiatrists,
Mm,
and uh, and on the basis of pharmacotherapy, I use psychotherapy. But if the patient is not very serious case,
mm,
and if the patient wants to do without any medication,
mm.
I will try. I have
Okay.
such patients presently. I have such patients at my
Uh,
clinic. Uh,
uh,
so doing only psychotherapy with them, and I think it's effective. So it depends on the case.
okay.
If the case is very, you know, severely disturbed case, so I think we should use uh, medications are necessary
Mm,
to, yeah, get him back on the recovery process.
mm. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
So
Yeah. I think sometimes I recently was working at a psychiatric center,
oh,
and
mhm,
many times uh, every patient there receives medication, and sometimes it does not matter if they have a really hard life,
mhm,
and if they get medication, like that's the first answer. And sometimes I have a bias and I think maybe they don't need medication. Medication sometimes has side effects or complications.
mhm.
Maybe they just need good therapy, but it's helpful to hear your point of view and think about this more. I think similar to you said you said one of your first experiences, you saw the psychiatrist, ask the patient questions, and then prescribe medication, but there was no counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've similar experience, and in my thinking, I was thinking, too much medication, more counseling, you know?
Uh,
Yeah, but
I would say we need both.
uh-huh, okay,
Only psychotherapy is very difficult to
mm,
treat the patient only with psychotherapy. But uh, depending on the case, it's possible. Yeah,
uh, uh,
yeah. As I said, I'm treating now two patients uh, in that way because
uh,
they hope hope for no medication and
mm,
just yeah psychotherapy.
okay, okay, good, thank you.
Mm.
Um,
Uh, for example, so uh, uh, the indication of psychotherapy depends on for example, the types of schizophrenia,
okay,
and as Sullivan uh, said, so he was the catatonic type was the best candidate for psychotherapy, and the next one is a paranoid type, and the heavy phrenic type is impossible to treat.
uh,
So nowadays, uh, the psychiatrist's view is different from Sullivan's. Maybe the catatonic type is first.
mm,
Yeah, they are most suited for psychotherapy. And the
okay,
second one for me is the heavy phrenic type. And the third is paranoid because they uh, they have a strong tendency to interpret any verbal
uh,
expressions uh, in a paranoid way. So I usually avoid verbal therapeutic sessions with paranoid. So that's why
uh,
I I tend to use uh, pictures or sand play technique,
uh,
hakoniwa technique. So that only deals with images.
mm,
But for me, paranoid type is very difficult
uh,
deal with. Yeah. So
you said,
in the case of
mm,
catatonic type, so usually some nucleus of the ego is still there, so we
mm,
can uh, relate to this nucleus
uh,
of his personality. So, and the patient tried to reconstruct his psyche uh,
mm,
relying on this nucleus.
uh,
So we can observe that. So yeah. So with such patients, I'm doing counseling only, and they are recovering.
mm. That's so interesting. You said the number one for you is catatonic. Number two is what?
Hebephrenic, disintegrating type.
Uh,
But in modern psychiatry, this disintegrating type is the core pathology of schizophrenia.
okay.
Disintegrating uh,
Uh,
personality.
uh, okay. Can you can you explain how you so explain how you can use drawing in therapy, and then maybe we can get into, you sent me a great article that you wrote on mirror symbolism. Maybe we can get into that as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So how I use drawings
Drawing. Yes.
in treatment. Yes. Uh, so these days I'm not doing so much of drawing therapy with
Okay.
schizophrenia because I have few patients here at
Uh,
my outpatient ba- basis clinic.
hmm.
So, but when I try to use drawing, so yeah, I just ask the patient to draw what comes up in his mind,
Hmm.
and maybe he uses I making use crayons or some
Hmm.
very with a soft touch
Uh-huh.
when drawing, and if he is fit for this method, he starts drawing freely
Uh, uh,
uh, and makes a series of drawings in the sessions. Or I can ask the patient to draw at his home
uh,
uh, outside the session and bring the drawing to the next session.
okay.
Uh, Either way,
And then do you interpret the drawings or ask the patient why they drew that picture, or how does that work?
uh, in principle, I don't interpret the drawings to the patient. So
Hmm.
I have my own interpretation, but I just make some comments on the drawings and
Uh,
and not I don't try to analyze it. Yeah,
uh,
patient. Yeah.
okay. Maybe you could make a comment like, uh, I don't know, like, that's interesting that you're so far away from your family, and then they can tell you why they drew them like that or something.
Or just my own reaction to the
Uh,
expressions
uh,
or what this is a very this was very strong or uh,
mm,
this uh, this seems to uh, express your own feelings or, yeah,
mm.
or something like that. But
Is that the purpose of drawing with patients with schizophrenia? Is that just to help them express what's going on inside? Is that for you to understand? Like, based on this drawing, it seems like they're at this stage, or their prognosis is good, or you know what I mean?
to for diagnosis.
Uh,
Uh,
for like conceptualization. Yeah.
or not to concept. So within the patient's psyche,
Hmm.
uh, uh, a healing process is going.
Uh-huh.
So it is it is try out to make him to express the process. So
Hmm.
and if it goes successfully, the series of drawings become a story
Uh,
of his yeah reconstructing his inner world,
Hmm.
something like that. So,
And
so okay, and uh, these days I tend to use sand play technique,
uh,
or even I don't know if you know that. So landscape montage technique.
hmm.
In landscape montage technique, we ask the patient to uh, draw a simple landscape of countryside,
uh,
and yeah, we tell the patient to uh, the constituent of the landscape in a certain set order. For example,
hmm.
first draw a river, second a mountain, and trees, and rice fields, yeah,
Hmm.
like that. And finally, he can complete the landscape.
uh,
So we do it with intervals of maybe a few months, maybe, or 1 month, depending on the phases of his healing process,
hmm.
but not every time at the session.
uh,
And the patient can draw, yeah, can show his healing process in a series of landscapes. So it is very
hmm.
simple to perform. Or
Hmm.
sun, what is the sun spray technique?
uh,
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 so I I usually use the sound play in patients on re, uh, rehabilitation stage, maybe with an interval of 1 month or so.
uh,
So this is a very not an intensive psychotherapy, but a more attenuated way of
hmm.
psychotherapy,
Hmm.
so to say.
uh,
So we can do, for example, with the schizophrenic patient, we don't do confrontational approach
hmm.
that destroys the patient. So schizophrenics are so vulnerable,
uh,
generally speaking,
uh,
even in their healing process. So we have to have first in mind their psychology. They have a very different psychology from healthy people.
hmm.
They have for so especially their ego boundaries are weak, uh,
Hmm.
are vulnerable against outer world, also against their inner world of psyche.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they can be invaded from both sides.
Hmm.
And even their acute phase has ended, so this tendency is continuing. So,
Hmm.
so we should have
Yeah.
this understanding of their psychology, yeah, first in mind. And so so there have been very famous psychotherapists with schizophrenics, like in Freudian school, for example, Sullivan, and from Reichman, you
uh,
know,
uh,
he was the first to advocate psychotherapy with schizophrenics, and
hmm.
Bion, and also Jung.
Mm.
So they don't use traditional classical psychoanalytic technique with the
Uh,
schizophrenics. They got transformed the original analytic way to fit the psychology of schizophrenia. This is very
uh,
important.
uh,
This is why I think psychopathology is very important to know their vulnerability, or so to know they are always in always trying to find recovery.
uh-huh, uh-huh. And would you say that understanding their psychology and understanding that they are always trying to find recovery, how does that, with knowing that, how do you practice with treating patients with schizophrenia? Like, you mentioned like maybe with drawings, with sandbox therapy, is it more just kind of relational, trying to build rapport, trying to help them with what they need?
Trying to help them relate to themselves
Oh, okay, okay.
by expressing the process. You know,
Hmm. Very slowly.
very slowly, yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah. But uh, the acute phase persists in a matter of months. But the
Oh,
process after the acute phase ended, so it needs time for them
ah,
to truly recover from psychotic state.
ah,
Uh-huh. They have no active symptoms, but uh, they're they're still uh, vulnerable
mm.
to social and psychological stresses. So this
Have
vulnerability
you?
remains.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Have you worked with people who were diagnosed with schizophrenia and they had schizophrenia and they had symptoms for maybe, 5 years, and then
Mhm.
through medication and psychotherapy, they no longer have any symptoms, but they are still vulnerable? Does that happen a lot?
Oh, but if a patient could come to this point of recovery, so yeah, it's a very lucky case, and I,
Uh,
I don't think there are many cases like that, but it
okay.
can happen, and
Uh,
even if they are free from productive symptoms, or yeah, uh, even if they don't look like a psychotic patient, but they're still weak
mm,
against any stress. So,
mm.
so that which prevents them from participating in social activities,
Mm.
and that could happen. Their weakened functions, social functions,
Mm.
even if they are only freed from symptoms.
And so when, let's say do you currently have anybody at your counseling practice that either was diagnosed with schizophrenia or still has schizophrenia?
Yes,
Okay,
as I mentioned, so
yes.
several chronic patients, and and
Huh.
maybe yeah,
Maybe if if they will never like fully recover, if that's lucky, what is your goal? What are you hoping for with them?
yeah. Some of them can work and others not, but they find uh, loving relationship with others.
Okay.
Uh, they can be very quietly, but yeah, happily. Yeah,
Mm,
it's a modest happiness, but yeah, they can be a member of society. So
mm.
yeah, that is
Okay.
yeah one way of their yeah
Yeah.
recovery.
Okay. Good. Good. Can you explain mirror symbolism?
Mirror symbolism. So
Mm,
yeah, yeah, I that was my own expression in my
oh,
in my thesis. You read
oh,
my thesis.
yes.
Okay. Mirror symbolism is for uh, so for instance, uh, when I try to understand the patient's psyche, it is
Mm,
not by my own eyes, but with the eyes of my psyche. So it's
mm,
it's similar to reflecting by the surface of a lake, for example.
mm,
So if the surface of the lake is disturbed disturbed by winds, so it
mm.
can't reflect the accurate image of
Uh-huh.
surroundings. So, so we
Uh,
uh, we know the state or of this patient or of my own psyche
mm,
even. So like reflecting it by a mirror.
mm,
So, and if I, for example, my mirror is clouded by own countertransference emotions, it can't reflect true state
oh,
of the psyche. So, something like that. So
yeah, yeah.
I have to work with my countertransference emotions to get the mirror serene.
Um, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So because you're saying that your psyche and your patient's psyche interact with one another, and
Yes.
if your psyche is rough, like a storm, then the patient will pick up on that and react to that. So you should have smooth, calm psyche, so no
Yeah.
bad answers.
That is part of it. But I what I would like to say is to know the state of psyche of the patient, for example, is like reflecting it on a mirror
Huh.
mirror of my own psyche. Yeah.
Huh.
So
I see.
I have to make it serene to function
Huh.
as a mirror.
Huh. Uh, oh. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Got it.
Yes,
Yeah.
got it.
Huh. Uh,
Is a, so the surface of the lake or my psychic mirror should not be disturbed, but uh, it is it is sometimes or it is often difficult to make it perfect mirror.
mhm.
So when appropriate time comes, the mirror uh, gets its good conditions, uh, and it
Hmm.
can act as a good mirror.
Hmm.
So the therapist, yeah, has to try to keep his mirror as good as possible.
For a clear reflection.
Hmm.
Got it. You, it's very interesting. I like that a lot. I like that symbolism. Yeah, the analogy. Um,
Yes, this is
you
an
wrote,
analogy.
yes, yes. You wrote, the analyst tries to open oneself to the archetype that most influences the analysand's complex.
Yeah,
And you said the analyst should work with the shared archetype in one's own personal life context. Can you explain that?
yes. So to do to work psychotherapeutically with the patient,
Hmm.
um, a moment. We have to have. We try to find something common with the patient.
Hmm.
So, for example, in example of my thesis, the patient had a very great father complex,
Huh.
um, and he had in very he had difficulty in relating to his center of the psyche that is to say the self.
Hmm.
So I have to help him to recover his relationship. But so to try to understand empathically as much as
Uh-huh.
possible. So I try to find something in common. So and we have in Jungian theory we have archetype archetype uh, and one's complexes are based on a certain archetype. An
Hmm.
archetype is in a way universal.
Huh.
So we go down to the level of the archetype and 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 find a patient's most important archetype.
Huh.
So, and something is so we can know what it is by our own counterference feelings. It is something is stirred. in our psyche, and
Mhm.
we have to be very careful to it, and we try to uh, see it as well as
Mhm.
possible. But my own complex, for example, is based on my own life experiences and very different from the patients. So
Mhm.
I have to separate my own personal problem
Mhm.
from the patient's own problems. But at the same time, uh, I have to have it in common. That is on the regional archetype.
Mhm.
Yeah, does it make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that is make myself open to a patient's own complex.
Okay.
In the case, it's a yeah, father complex or uh, his success complex.
Mhm. So
But I
it reminds
mhm,
me,
mhm,
there's, I forget the author, but they said in order to find the patient, we have to look within ourselves. And that's what it makes me think of is like if your patient has a father complex, you have to be able to relate to that and empathize. So that that father complex, if it's archetypal, you can try to find that within yourself and better relate to the patient, kind of.
yes, so find or uh, that is constellated in
Uh,
me, myself.
uh,
So, and I work with my own issue in my
mm,
real life, mm, not with patients' life. So I
mm,
don't try to make patients as I wish him to be.
uh,
That is uh, no use or even disruptive to the process.
mm,
So thus we separate the problem, so therapist from the patient's own problems.
mm.
So
Okay.
we have something common, but we are separate.
Mm. And
That is
it,
the okay. That is the state of mirroring.
uh-huh, uh-huh, yes. It reminds me, did Jung talk about in order to in order to be an impact on our patients, we have to allow our patients to impact us as well, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
We get good impact from the patient. So
Mm,
yeah, that is
mm,
yeah concentrating some uh, so to say complex or some emotions in us. So
mm.
working with the therapist's own countertransference is the key
Uh,
of therapy, I would
mm,
say.
okay.
Transference also, uh, for for example, the schizophrenic patients, uh, transferences, um, they they transference their uh, self image of the self on the therapist,
Uh,
but
how does
therapists
that?
won't become won't become that
Uh,
figure of self. We don't become a god in the therapy. So we have to separate ourselves from uh,
mm, yeah,
his transference.
mm. Okay. I want to be respectful of your time. Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah.
Uh, I wanted to ask, um, so Carl Jung wrote a lot. He like analyzed Christian rituals like the Mass.
Uh,
Um, and I wanted to ask, have you ever analyzed or thought from a Jungian perspective on Japanese uh, traditions or rituals? Kind of like there's like the Obon festival every year where for 3 days your ancestors come back and you like lay out food for them, and then at the end of the 3 days they return. Have you thought of,
yes.
yeah, have you thought about cultural Japanese cultural traditions or rituals from a Jungian perspective and what that says about the Japanese psyche?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it so far, but yeah, so I just accept it as yeah traditions. But maybe the uh, Obon festival. So that would be a chance for us to uh, re, re, relating
Mm,
to our ancestors in ourselves, ancestors' souls. So that is a part of our archetypal
uh,
unconscious. So
uh,
every year, inviting the souls of the ancestors are very meaningful for
uh,
us to
uh,
make uh, on individual basis, make relationship to one's own archetypes.
uh,
Uh, and
yeah.
yeah, all right. Uh, shall I take up a different example?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you know the cherry blossom viewing
Mm,
festival in April, yeah, in Japan. So in ancient times, it was done by the emperor of Japan,
uh,
and they uh, did the blossom viewing in the countryside, and the cherry blossoms are in bloom on the side of the a mountain,
uh,
and they thought uh, rice, the soul of God, rice God, are the flowers are the abode of souls of rice God,
uh,
and and they are flown when they are flown by the wind and descend on the rice fields,
uh,
and they turn into a rice pads, and in the autumn they can harvest rice. So the flower souls are transformed into rice forms.
oh wow, that's
Uh,
really neat.
rice are and rice were maybe regarded as the God's body,
Uh,
and leaving their body as our food, and they
uh,
return to the mountain, and
oh,
they become visible as cherry blossoms in spring again.
uh,
Every year, this is repeated.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that is it is said it is the source of uh, the, the present custom of cherry blossom viewing. And
Oh, very interesting.
so
That's,
I don't want to interpret it
hmm,
in a Jungian way. So, but maybe it's a circulation of it depicts circulation of life.
Mm.
The Asian people sensed it in a natural phenomenon
Mm.
and, interpret it as myth
Ah,
and
almost like the dying and resurrecting myth.
yeah, yeah, that is the same thing I would
Oh,
say. But
oh,
this is the God soul, and they make us the gods. Mountain gods make us rich
oh.
or make us live subatory lives. So this is more, I would say, more scientific rather than the psychological. Because, yeah,
Oh, interesting.
I think this is characteristic of Japanese mentality. We accept such mythic stories very uh, naturally.
Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe psychologically, it is the circle is uh, yeah very uh, in a state of origin of
Mm.
every existence, life, every life, and
Mm.
circulation of life. It is complete in itself in a
Mm-hmm.
perfect form.
Um, I just I wanted to say thank you again very much for joining me. I've learned a lot from this discussion, and I've really appreciated your time. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.